Welcome to Transcendent. I'm Joe, and I'm the dad.
And I'm Raya, and I'm the daughter.
This Transcendent is... Are we still talking about the name, or are we just going to throw the word out there? What is this about?
Transcendent is about preserving healthy relationships and promoting healthy relationships together.
What is this podcast we're doing about?
This podcast is we're talking a little bit about privilege, and we're exploring some of the misinformation that I think is out there. And I'm hoping that we can talk, especially who I have in mind is the person that has heard people throw around this word privilege. Oh, you have privilege this and you have privilege that.
And I don't?
And
is that what they're saying?
And you think that doesn't make any sense to me. I remember a few years ago, I went out when everybody was playing Pokemon Go, and I had my phone out, and you would walk around, and you would, pull up, you would walk around town, and then you would find this Pokemon here, and you would go and catch it. And it was fun because it got me to walk. And one of the people that was on my team, I met other people around the village that all played this Pokemon Go. And I became friends with another guy in town, and we got to talking about a variety of things, and one of the topics that came up as we were talking was about privilege. And he said, I just don't buy this thing. He said, I don't think that I have privilege. Yes, I'm a straight white man, but I don't have a thing. That doesn't give me any new thing at all. I don't have all of a sudden all of these superpowers that I just get to float through life and everything is easy for me. My life is just as hard as anybody else's. And we talked about it a little bit, and I said, but think about this person that doesn't have some of what you have, or this person that doesn't have some of what you have. And he said, I understand all that, but those aren't things that I have that they don't have. Those are mine. I start with baseline, and they're lacking some things. So yes, I'll admit that I have some pieces that other people don't have, but it's not like I have, it's not a privilege. A privilege is something you have.
Well, let me remind you of something that you've long forgotten. It was on your 6th birthday. And on your 6th birthday, you had gone to bed, and I always came in and I'd visit it with you, and I'd do the same thing with Mel. We'd sit down and read a story, or I'd tell a story, or we talk about something. And on your 6th birthday, I said to you, this is your 6th birthday. If you could have anything you want, any wish you want would come true, what would you wish for?
And I know what I said.
What did you say?
I said, I wish that I could make the rules.
Yes, that's exactly. I thought that was really profound for a 6-year-old kid.
I'm sure I was annoyed by something that had happened, and I thought, I want to do things different.
But you didn't say it right away. You thought about it a bit, and you thought, this is going to work.
And now here I am, and I get to make the rules.
Yes,
I'm an adult now. And sometimes I think, boy, I wish I had it as easy as I did when I was 6.
Yes, that's right.
And isn't that always the case, that we oftentimes can look at something, and this is on both sides, that we will look at something and we will think that it will feel one way, but when we get there, we discover that it feels entirely different from what we thought. Now, for me, here's the examples I was thinking through is on a weekend, I think, I've been working all week. The most relaxing thing I can do is to just loaf for the weekend. I'm just going to hang out in my lazy boy chair and read a book or watch TV. But anytime I do that, I don't feel refreshed at the end of the weekend. But one of the most refreshing things I can do is go take on a project. Maybe I'm cleaning out a closet, or I'm doing some deep cleaning in my bathroom, or I do something where I've put in the work and I finish, and then I think, wow, do I ever feel good? Oh, man, do I feel good.
I think that's called accomplishment.
And it's the exact opposite of what we think. Now, I know this, but even still, when I go to start that project, I think, I don't really want to do this.
Yes.
What a hassle this thing is.
Mm-hmm. When I was, when we lived in our other house and we had a big yard, I would go outside in the morning after breakfast on a weekend, and I'd think, I'm going to do a few things here or there. And I'd end up spending the whole day out there because I'd find one thing which would lead to another and another, and I enjoyed it. It was a good time, but it wasn't what I planned to do. I planned to go out. Oh, I've got to just take care of a few things here, and I'm gonna trim these bushes back. And then I'd realize, oh, wait a minute, there's some more bushes over there, and there's this, and oh, I've got to do that, and oh, we should do that, and I'm going to transplant this. I've always been thinking about doing that, and those types of things. So one thing led to another, and it filled my day. And you're right. At the end of the day, I felt like I accomplished a lot.
They say that our brains are really, really bad at figuring out what will make us happy. And what we think will make us happy, this is not a guess. This is not some philosopher somewhere that said this. They've done scientific studies that have proven the things that we most think will make us happy generally don't, or they improve our mood for a little bit and then they quickly dissipate. And a lot of the things that we think that's not going to be that big of a deal end up being some of the most profound things. Now, you have an example of that happened a few years ago.
It happened 2 years ago. It was in September, and I'm a military veteran. I was only in the military for 3 years, but it was 3 exciting years. I spent 2 of those 3 years in a foreign country. I loved what I did, but I came back. This was during the Vietnam War, and I came back to a non-reception. That was really surprising to me. Not only did I come back to a non-reception, but I had people, plural, that had made comments to me as I'd walk past, and they weren't positive. If you wanted to get a good price on an airline ticket, you had to fly in uniform. And so I was in uniform as I was traveling. And people would make comments because I was in during the Vietnam War. They thought I was in Vietnam, and they'd say things like "Get out of Vietnam" or things like that. And there was no welcome home for me, nothing like that. So now something new has started, and it's called the Honors Flight, and they have them all over the country. I think they have them in 45 states or maybe 46, and they take people, Vietnam veterans and Korean veterans and people who were in World War II, although they're hard to find now.
Well, that's where I first heard about it.
Yes.
I remember when my grandfather, your father-in-law, went, and I remember how profound it was for him.
So I was selected to go on the Honors Flight. You leave in the morning and you come back at night, and it went from our local airport to Washington, D.C., and came back again. I knew what I just told you. That's what I knew about it. I didn't know what else it was, but everybody said it's really great. I thought, yeah, this will be fine.
And you've been to D.C. before. This was not your first trip there.
No, it wasn't. But I didn't see all of the things that they told us we were going to see. That they show you the memorials, but there's a whole lot more.
So you went into it thinking, this will be a good experience.
Yeah, great. I'm glad I was selected to go. And fortunately, I was able to go with a friend who was also a Vietnam-era veteran, and we went together. We happened to be pretty healthy, but if we weren't, we could select somebody to go with us that could help us along the way. As it turned out, they assigned somebody to us anyway, which was really fun. I'd walk along and I'd carry something, and they'd say, "Oh, here, can I carry that?" Anyway, we were treated like royalty. I mean, truly treated like royalty. I was absolutely shocked at what an experience this was. Far greater than I expected. Far more. It was memorable. It was so emotional, and it was just so rewarding. that they really treated us sincerely, with such appreciation that it was just so moving. There were many times I was led to tears, and but some people liked it. No, no. No, but we did. We saw the World War II memorial. We just saw so many things. I don't want to waste time here on the podcast with it, but I will tell you, it was so powerful and so memorable. Anyone out there who is a veteran who hasn't done this, you should take a look at it. And I will tell you, it is such an amazing experience. It's not what I thought. Yes, it is what I thought, but it's not of the depth and breadth and height my soul can reach.
You didn't know how much it would impact you, how much it would affect you.
I didn't, and it still affects me. And they gave us things like they gave us a jacket that has the honors flight on it, and I wear that proudly because it just meant so much to me. And I will tell you that I felt privileged.
Well, I know I'm very grateful for your service, and I think many of our listeners would all say that exact same thing. And to our listeners that have served, we're grateful for your service as well. Would you talk? So that story I asked you to share because it's an example of going into something and we assume that we know how it will make us feel, but it ends up feeling much different. But I also want to talk a little bit about privilege from the military. And you shared some things with me. Tell me a little bit about privilege in the military.
Well, in the military, those of us who, when we first went in the military, you're the lowest of the low. They call it a private E1. That's pretty low. And whether you were in the other branches of the service, they have something similar. Everybody starts out really low. And we used to say, well, the Army is a place where they take all your rights away from you and give them back to you one at a time as privileges. we would say that often. But we also heard from those above us when we would say something like to a sergeant or to a master sergeant or a lieutenant, well, how come you can do that and we can't? And they would always answer RHIP. Those of you in the military know exactly what that stands for. Rank has its privileges. And we lived with that. And as we got a higher rank, we had a few more privileges.
So I want to talk about how my view of privilege has changed. When I was first looking at these, I lived most of my life having all of what we think of as regular privileges in society. I was straight, white man, or at least male presenting. I wouldn't maybe describe myself looking back. I wouldn't say that. I don't like referring to myself as a man then because now I've transitioned and I would rather claim who I am now because who I was then feels like what I left behind and who I don't want to be any longer. However, regardless of how I felt about it, I went through my entire life with those privileges of being a straight white man and being treated by society as someone that when I spoke, it was assumed that people would listen to me. I could just speak up in most contexts, and it was, I could figure that people would respect my opinion, respect what I thought, and listen to me and give that weight. And I was very surprised at some of the places where that changed after I transitioned, and I look at things a lot differently now. And the reason I wanted to start with that discussion about how we think things will feel and how they end up actually feeling can be quite different things. Because for me, what I thought my life would be like after I transitioned and what it's actually like, in many ways, are exactly what I thought it would be. But in many ways, I had no idea to anticipate how I would actually feel. Now, we've talked about some of those. For instance, I thought once I transition, I'm not going to be one of those people that gets really upset and angry if you get my pronouns wrong or if you get my name wrong. That I just think that's so obnoxious that people get all about that, and can't they just let it go? And that's how I thought I'm going to live my life, that I'm not going to be one of those obnoxious ones until I lived it. And then I discovered, oh, this feels a lot different than I expected it would. And it actually really, really hurts when somebody says those things, way deeper than I ever thought it would beforehand. And now that I've lost some of those privileges, you have privilege. You just go through life that nobody ever thinks to themselves, I wonder, is Joe maybe a woman? No, nobody has ever thought that one time.
Not to my knowledge.
Right? But I've had times where people thought to me after I transitioned, is that really a woman? And even having that happen one time, now thankfully that doesn't happen much anymore. But even having it happen one time, that profoundly affects you. And I don't think I realized how much of a difference it would make. And I wish I could go back and tell the old me, you're kind of going through life with a lot of assumptions about that everybody's life is kind of like yours. That wasn't unique to me. We all do that as humans, right? We all assume everybody is pretty much like me. Until you lose some things and people start treating you differently. I can imagine to myself what it might be like if I was navigating the world as a person of color, if I was black or if I was Hispanic or some other marginalized racial group. But I can't ever really know. And what my transition taught me is that how I think it's going to be and how it actually is are sometimes two entirely different things. And when we had the whole, a few years ago where we started really, really talking about race in our country, and where we as white folks started to really wake up and say, we need to be listening a lot more. I know I was listening in a way where I had experienced, well, I'm pretty sure I know what it would feel like if I was in your shoes. Only to discover, no, I actually had no idea. So when we as a culture started really listening, I listened in a way where I said, I can't assume that I know what you're going to say, because I did that once and I was wrong.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, I can think of that too. I can think of examples where I thought, well, I don't understand why these people are so depressed about something until I was depressed.
Oh, yes.
Wow. I can remember back when I owned my company in 2008, not only did I think we were having a hard time keeping the door open, not only did I think we were going to close the door, I thought I was going to lose everything. I thought I was going to lose my house and everything I had. It was a really difficult time for us. At that point, I realized what depression feels like. And it was tough. It was really tough. That's about the time you came on board and we were working together, and you saw that in me.
Mm-hmm.
It was
I had never seen you like that. And for our listeners, you know how Dad is. You know that he is constantly happy. And this is not an act that he puts on for the show. This is how he is in life. He is one of the most positive people that I know. And so to see you when you went through that period, to see you still were positive. You didn't change your outlook. But it was hard for you. And I saw you in a much more difficult place than I've ever seen you before.
Well, it was the most difficult place I was in my life.
And if you had to go back and try to explain to yourself beforehand how that was going to be like, well, it would have been hard, I think.
The thing is, it wasn't just me. I had a family. and and I had an extended family and people around me. I didn't want to have to be dependent on someone else. I thought, we're fine. We got all this. But when we lost everything, just about, we didn't. We almost lost everything. I lost most of my retirement funds. I lost just about everything.
We went into the bank and we said, well,
Yeah, we did.
I think
You and
we're
I
going to have to
together.
close down the business. And all of those employees that were depending on the business for their livelihood,
Right.
we thought that was all going to be gone.
Yep. And I cannot transfer that feeling to other people who have different crises, but I can kind of identify with it. I can identify with people who have business crises and they see I could lose everything here. That part I get because that's what I could do, but I can't identify with somebody thinks I'm going to lose my marriage. We're going to get a divorce. I'm going to lose my relationship with my grandmother because she doesn't accept the fact that I might be LGBTQ. I might lose my relationship with my friends who I've had all my life that I grew up with. Here's my best friend and here's my other very close friends. This is my circle of friends. How are they going to treat me after I come out? And what are they? I'm not sure. Do I want to go to the class reunion? I don't know. How's it going to be? I can't identify with that. I don't know, but I kind of know. I know suddenly it's different.
The thing about this, when we talk about privilege, regardless of whether that word is the right word or not, we're identifying the experience that when you have something in your life that's good, you're inclined to not notice it. That's not unique to any individual person. It's just us as humans. We're inclined to not notice the things that are going well. But when you have something that's not going well, you can't help but notice it. You can't help but notice the fact that, I remember years ago, I was a child and it was at Thanksgiving. And remember, we were at church and the pastor had us do a thing where we would write down something that we were thankful for and you would bring it up and you would put it on the altar. Or maybe some people talked about it. I don't remember even exactly what the thing was, but I remember the comment that the pastor made. And it stuck with me my whole life. And he said, I find it interesting that many of the older people in the congregation said, I'm thankful for my health. And I thought that to myself because here I was, probably 10 or 12 years old. And I thought, that's never even occurred to me to be thankful for my health. This is just normal life. This is how things are. It's not until you have the threat of losing something till you really realize, like the old saying goes, you don't know what you got till it's gone.
I had that situation today happen to me. I went to breakfast with a friend of mine. At breakfast this morning, he had tears in his eyes and he told me he lost his driver's license. He's got early dementia and he was forced to take some tests and they told him he can't drive anymore. And that's really tough for him. Here you see an 80-year-old guy with tears in his eyes because it's a huge privilege that's been taken away. That happened this morning. That's a tough thing. They say as you get older, that's one of the things that's really difficult because you're losing a freedom.
A few years ago, I attended a seminar. It was a training session, actually, for people that were going into ministry. And at that time, I thought I might be going into ministry full time. And that has ended up not being the case. But at the time, I thought that I was going to. And so I was with a group of about 25 other people, and it was a racially diverse group of people. It was with a church that's primarily serving the LGBTQ community. And so it was primarily a group of queer pastors. So gay and lesbian and bisexual, transgender, and all sorts of other people. So there was definitely a sense of we want to help people that are marginalized in our community.
Just like we do in our podcast.
And we did an exercise where we all lined up. You may have heard of this. It's called a privilege walk. We all lined up in a row facing forward. So we weren't facing one another. It wasn't a line like you line up in school. Imagine lining up in school, but then everybody turns to the side. So you're facing outwards from the line. And what the facilitator did is she said, I'm going to read some statements, and some statements I'm going to ask you to take a step forward if you've got something in your life that has given you a little advantage. And I'm going to ask you to take a step backwards if you've got something that has made your life a little bit harder. None of these things determine whether you're going to be successful or not, but it's just how did things go? And there were about, as I said, I don't know, 25 of us or so. And I thought to myself, I will probably come out near the front because it's a racially diverse group of people. And I know I have a lot of things that have gone well. But I was not expecting that I would be the very, very front person, which was somewhat of a surprise to me. I want to read a few of the statements that came, and you can Google this. If you just do a Google search for privilege walk, you can actually see a whole list of these. This one has 30. I'm not going to read all 30. But to give you an idea, if one or both of your parents graduated from college, take one step forward. I would take a step forward.
I would take a step back.
Well, in this one, you don't step. This is only if you're stepping forward. Then the next one, if you are going to be the first person in your immediate family to graduate from college, take one step back. No, so you would stay even on that.
My sister graduated.
Okay. If you ever attended a summer camp or a private school growing up, take one step forward. There's a step for me.
Me too.
Okay. If you started school speaking a language other than English, take a step back. You wouldn't, but your mother would.
Yes.
Your mother would, yeah.
Yep, she would have.
Okay, if you were told by your parents that you were beautiful, smart, or successful, take one step forward. I would take 3 steps forward on that. You were very supportive. If you have ever been the only person of your race or ethnicity in a classroom or place of work, take one step back. We don't often think of that, of somebody that is racially marginalized, what that it feels like to live in a society where everybody else is different.
I had that experience. I lived in a society for 2 years in which I would never become equal.
Yes, you did. So you have a little bit of
that.
A little bit of that understanding. Here's one. If you knew since you were a child that it was expected of you to go to college, take one step forward. No, you didn't have that. I absolutely had that.
Yes, you did.
And I imparted that to my kids because I wanted them to have that privilege.
And so did your sister.
Yes. And I always told my kids, I said, if you don't go to school, that's fine. I'm not going to judge you. I will completely support you. But I want you to know the baseline of what we're kind of figuring is that you will, and so far all of them have. And so that does give a privilege. There's one, I'm not going to read it because I don't actually see it on the list, but one that really stuck out with me that I remember her reading, if you go to the store to buy Band-Aids and you can't find a Band-Aid that matches your skin color, take a step back. Just a little thing we don't think about. And yet this thing that's intended to blend in for people of other skin tones makes a big difference. And there's lots of these things. Now, I did not expect when we did that privilege walk, she said, now this may be hard for some of you. And I thought to myself, this is not going to be hard for me. I've already done some work on this, and I'm not like those people that can't accept my own privilege. I know I'm going to be near the front, and I'm going to receive what we're talking about here. I'm not going to try to reject this, is what I thought to myself. But I was not prepared for what she said next. She said, because some of you are going to find yourselves near the back. And I'm really sorry. I wish there was another way to demonstrate this. I know this can be really difficult for those of you near the back. Because all of a sudden you realize, oh, wow, I don't like having this demonstrated so clearly. And I thought to myself, wow, there is privilege right there. I thought to myself, this is going to be hard for me because I'm going to have to wake up to all of the things that I've had well. And it never occurred to me how difficult this can be for somebody that has to be reminded of all of the things that they don't have. And so I think I just wanted to have this conversation because it helps us, first of all, to be thankful. One of the best things that we can do to live a happier life is to find those things that we're thankful for, and those things especially that oftentimes go unnoticed, and to point it out and recognize I'm really, really thankful for those things that I have. But also, and more importantly, to have empathy for those people in our lives that don't have those things. And that we wouldn't say, oh, it's not that big of a deal. Oh, why are you acting so worried about the fact I just got your name wrong? Can't you see I'm trying? Oh, well, I just said your pronoun wrong. Can't you see? It's not that. Look at how hard this is for me. And it turns out you're at the front of the line, and I'm trying to say, I'm way back here. And that really hurts when you say, when you get my pronoun wrong. Right? We all have things like that. And I want us all, when we get to those things, to just stop and take a moment and say, maybe I don't fully understand what it's like to be missing that privilege, and maybe I need to listen a little more. We'd love to listen to you and what you have to say. We get emails from you, and we're really grateful when you give us your feedback. Dad, where can they send us that email?
They can send that to transcendent@gmail.com. And you know how to spell it.
Yes, if you don't know, you can look at your podcast and it's going to be right on there.
Yes, it ends with A-N-T, not E-N-T. That's the biggest mistake most people make.
Yes. Thank you again for listening. We are so grateful to have you here. We're grateful for the fact that we get to have a podcast and we have the technology for all of this and for our relationship together. And thank you for listening.
And I want to add that it helps us if you subscribe. You see that little subscribe button up above? If you hit subscribe on there, it costs you nothing, but it helps move us up in the search engines. So we'd encourage you to do that. And also, if you have any ideas on subjects you'd like us to address, write us about that. Like you did last week. We thank you for that.